Sir, can I ask one last question about the assignment? Here, this or do I have to break it? Or it's one part?
Yes.
Don't have to break it.
Do,
Have to.
yeah,
Oh,
two verbs
because
there.
just now you said these are parotactic, right?
Yeah.
So break it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's close off tonight with a last poem. And if you notice that this poem has been translated to Chinese. It was translated by a professor of Chinese literature in the US. And after our discussion here, I'd like you to be thinking about, does anything get lost in the translation? Or, because whenever the translator is working on a poem like this, translator is really interpreting, really wanting to understand what the poet is saying. And so this poem is the last one, Uncle Never Knew. So let's take a look at the poem. And I don't have a recording of this one, so I will read it, okay? I remember at the time that Edward gave me this poem, he came over to me and he said, this poem will be completely different than what you've analyzed in the past. There's no Western influence here. It is Asian. So let's see. He lived, if you could call it that, 2 streets off, Boat Key North, tranquil as leaves left in a teacup, always alone but never lonely. The daily bustle of barge and coolie, ferry, rubber, and rice and spice, all energy and profit for Tokays and Guthries, slip past without ripple or sound or promise. No entertaining cleverness to make his brothers happy. Nothing drew him to our hot meridian. Often after rain, he would watch the day dry out. But if a few drops caught the sun and glittered against that thinning blue strip of northern sky, he was back in Swatow at his table, preparing ink and brush, fingering his father's piece of jade, intoning Li Bo, Du Fu, and reading Mao. Sipped tea, fed his carps while waiting for his friends. You know what Swatow is, right? Swatow is Shantou. In Teochew language, it's pronounced as Swatow. Edwin is mixed race. His father is Indian and his mother is Chinese. And this uncle is on his mother's side. One of the things that he, as a child, after school, he would frequently go to his uncle's to spend time with his uncle, talk with his uncle. This is sort of then what prompted this poem. Great houses are history, plan, essential unity, belief, a way of life which brooks no breaking of fidelity. Rooted comforts reaffirm. Nothing is extinguished. Memory is full and whole. He was ensconced, secure. For a few, it's the only pulse. Many need this bedrock, this island, so little that Chang Po barely noticed. Post-astral, Uncle stroked his undernourished beard, spoke to clouds, not people. The moon climbed roofs as he waited for glowworms to signify the darkening bamboos. Communing with self, he was his favorite neighbor. He could not hear migrant hearts change rivers from big to small, smelling one. Or field dreams gather along Carpenter Street, then roll down Tel Aryeh and Anselm Hill to answer temple bells. World was hard language, felt daily as heart and will drop into salt-releasing opium, working up hungry lungs as shadows flickered on the wall. He never knew our age in full, had no transplanted way to name its joys, its follies. True exile, he denied our home till life do us part. In 51, leaving companions, Marx, Engels, Mao, Liu Shun, Li Sao, Tao Qian. When I am by you, River, I feel Uncle watching me. I hear much from inside his spirit, his affirmations. Old country stories resurface, tell their tale. That house I've never seen tries to sketch itself. His mother's side, this uncle, they were wealthy. And this uncle was sent from the family to China to go to Singapore, where the family was and the business was, to learn the business and to become part of the family business. But he was not one to become part of the business. He distanced himself from it and longed to be back to China. On the one hand, we have Uncle's very tranquil, solitary existence. But then on the other side, you have the daily bustle of life around him. It seems so similar how he describes his uncle as how Tao Qian is described. In Tao Qian's a famous fifth poem of drinking wine, I built my house in this world of men, but there is no noise of carriages and horses. The daily bustle of barge and coolie, ferrying rubber, rice, and spice, all energy or profit, for Tokes and Guthries slip past without ripple or sound or promise. Professor Zhang Shi, who was here at City U and did the Department of Chinese, well known, he wrote this about Tao Qian's poetry. The first two lines of this poem, the ones I just read, set up a structural and thematic opposition between the poet's private world and the world of men, with its noise, carriages, and horses. An opposition that reappears time and time again in Tao Qian's poetry. In other words, what Edwin is drawing on now is Tao Qian, using that to compare with his uncle. Uncle is the true exile. He resisted all attempts to bring him into the family business. As the line said, no enterprising cleverness to make his brothers happy. Nothing drew him to our operation. He longed for the life he previously had back in China, Swaziland. The poet's description of his uncle recalls descriptions of Tao Qian. Again, I'm quoting from Professor Zhang Shi. There was a certain stubbornness and a great deal of courage in Tao Qian that made him a solitary traveler on the path he chose. The poet continues, often after rain, he would watch the day dry out, but if a few drops caught the sun and glittered against that thinning blue strip of northern sky, he was back, Swata, at his table, preparing ink and brush, fingering his father's piece of jade, intoning Li Bo, one of the 8 immortals of the wine cup, Du Hu. Again, very Confucianist way of philosophy. Mao. sipped tea, fed his carps while waiting for his friends. In line 22, do you know what the word astral means? Astral is like you're talking about an out-of-the-body experience. Well, when he says post-astral, it's like after an out-of-the-body experience. And what was that out-of-the-body experience for his uncle when he was back in Swamptown? His thinking, his feeling. He was back in Swamptown at his table. This was his dreaming, all right? So post-astral uncle, this is in line 22. I want you to begin to notice something about this poem. It's interesting because the poem itself goes from 1 to 11. In line 12, he was back in Swamptown, the astral experience. In line 22, post-astral, it's after the fact. And 32 to 41, well, what's the difference between this and what preceded? Well, all of this is past tense. This is present tense. Do you notice something about the line 1 through 11, beginning on 12, beginning on 22, beginning on 32, and it always ends 11, 21, 31, 41. So the poem breaks up into these parts, which is, in a way, 11 lines. Basically. He never knew our age in full. His 6 companions were Marx and Engels and Mao, the very revolutionary 3, and those of the foundations of Chinese culture, Lu Sheng, Li Sao, Tao Qian. His uncle was a mix of all these philosophies and so forth. If you look at this line in line 34, he never knew our age in full. And you'll notice that every line consists of 11 words. That number, 11, keeps coming back. Not only in these 4 sections that we talked about, but also in each of these lines. He makes that point about till like us do us part. Well, it's in marriage, what is the wedding vow usually? Till death do us part. But here it's till life do us part. Because going back was like living. Before his return, basically, whether he lived or not, he lived if you could call him that. That's what the writer of the poem says. Life is recovered when he returns to his origins. Now, these lines, you notice till life do us part in 51, leaving companions. Well, it's the same idea, and it comes from this, the I Ching. And it's the description of lines for hexagram, what? Hexagram 11. And what is hexagram 11? Harmony, peace. The return to origins is the return to peace and to harmony. The way he writes here is so similar to what's there. So what is the I Ching, this Taoist kind of philosophy? Well, the Taoist kind of philosophy is yin and yang, balance between the two. They're opposites. Yin is feminine, yang is masculine. Yin is dark, yang is light. Yin is down and in, yang represents out and up. So this is the 11th hexagram, the idea of peace. Now this sort of carries on throughout the poem then, because that idea of balance, that we see it repeated. We have heart mentioned twice, big and small, down, up, drop, up, hard, soft, feel, felt, repeated. Again, those pairs, those repetitions of items. Barge and coolie, energy and profit, tokes and guthrie's. ink and brush, Li Bo, Du Fu. Sip tea, fed his carps. Again, things in twos, pairs. So this yin, emptiness, nothingness, and that is what he was when he was there in Singapore. No enterprising cleverness to make his brothers happy. Nothing drew him to our hot meridian. Always alone, never lonely. Tranquil as leaves left in a teacup, slip past without ripple or sound. He is alone, but he's not lonely. The teacup is empty except for the tea leaves left behind. All energy and profit leave nothing behind in their wake. This nothingness. But then when he gets to Swatow, he is suddenly busy. He's preparing ink and brush, and he's sipping tea. He's active. He's busy. This is the yang side. When he is back in Swatow. The last lines, they're distinct because they are first person. When I am by you, river, I feel Uncle watching me. Uncle is felt. His affirmations are heard. I hear much from inside his spirit, his affirmations. It is all very spiritual. It is not very much physical. You see, his uncle left, returned to China. His uncle had fallen. There is a reason why he is standing by the river. The river is like the Tao, or like you. Tao is likened by some to a path, a river, at the end of which one achieves the universal rule of the return to origins. At the point of origin, one knows balance, harmony, tranquility. It ends on these two lines. Old country stories resurface, tell their tale. That house I've never seen tries to sketch itself. The country house I've never seen tries to sketch itself. It's verbal, it's visual, and it tries to sketch itself. You see, it's all based on all he knows of what was back there. All that Edwin knows is what his uncle told him. That's all he can know. He never saw it himself. When did the uncle return to Swatow? 51. Uncle never knew ends on what line? 41. That house I've never seen tries to sketch itself. That house, the poet had never seen. So the sketch, it's unfinished. It tries to sketch itself. It's unfinished. The poem, by the poet's own admission, also is complete. Never fully capturing that way of life, that house, that is one. It's incomplete. You know, it suggested to me, everything ends 11, 21, 31, 41. But his uncle left 51. It's almost as though there is a section which is then left unwritten. It is that house that tries to sketch itself. It is that incompleteness that the poet felt from what his uncle, the stories that his uncle had told about. As you remember that line in the poem, the poet's reading, neat incompletion of suffice. The poem is, it relies so much on Chinese culture and Chinese historical figures. You try to tell the story about his uncle, who was Chinese, who longed for China and who did return. In a way, it was rather sad because Edwin visited us in Hong Kong. He came and he was a visiting lecturer for a while here. And he always kept saying that his dream, Edwin's dream, was to go to Stockholm. He wanted to see where his uncle was going. He never did get there. Next week is your in-class quiz. And next week, sergeant quiz, next week, Friday. Your assignment to student. So, some of you, I replied to you, if you sent me your draft, I told you no. I said, to be fair. But I do answer specific questions, right? That's good. Well, I wish you well in your analysis and wish you well next week for your test. I'm gonna let you go now. I did have some